Good evening and welcome to Qnews special coverage. The Israeli occupying military has launched a ground operation in northern of the Palestinian side of Rafah in part of an ongoing campaign to expand what Israel calls security zones in Gaza. Meanwhile, the tensions rise as Israeli officials lead a controversial settler raid on Al-Aqsa Mosque, and new settlements are recognized in the occupied West Bank. Stay with us for the latest updates on these developments. The Israeli occupation military has announced the start of a ground operation in the Palestinian side of Rafah, targeting the city's northern areas. The operation is part of a broader campaign to seize control of large areas within Gaza and incorporate them into what Israel calls security zones. Defense Minister Israel Katz confirmed that the military is expanding what it has named Operation Strength and Sword, with large-scale evacuations expected within the coming days. Katz also urged residents in Gaza to pressure Hamas to release Israeli detainees. And according to Israeli media, the defense minister stated that parts of Gaza would be brought under direct Israeli control as part of the ongoing operation. Israeli Minister of National Security Ben-Gvir has led a settler raid on Al-Aqsa Mosque under heavy police protection. Dozens of settlers under Ben-Gvir's leadership enter the mosque in groups through the Maghrabi gate, performing provocative religious rituals. Palestinian news agencies reported that Israeli forces intensified their presence around the mosque's gates and the Old City, obstructing the access of worshippers to the mosque. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has announced that military operations in Gaza were intensified last night, focusing on seizing territory and demolishing infrastructure. He emphasized that the strategy now involves progressively fragmenting Gaza, escalating pressure in stages. Netanyahu's statement indicates a continued and increasing military campaign to further control Gaza and weaken its infrastructure, with the goal of further destabilizing the region. And Egypt has strongly condemned the Israeli National Security Minister's storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque under police protection during Eid. In a statement by the Foreign Ministry, Egypt warns against continued provocative actions that violate international law and threaten regional stability. Egypt also stresses preserving the mosque's legal status and urges global intervention to halt these violations, cautioning that failure to act could spark widespread unrest, jeopardizing Middle East stability and international security. And Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel-Ati has discussed the ongoing Palestinian cause, particularly in the West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem, with his Jordanian counterpart, Ayman el-Safadi. That came during a phone call where the two foreign ministers addressed Israeli escalation and violations of international law. The ministers also reviewed efforts by Egypt and Qatar for a Gaza ceasefire, Israeli provocations and settlement activities, reaffirming that regional stability depends on full Palestinian rights, including statehood with East Jerusalem as its capital. And for further analysis, we're joined from Ramallah by the Professor of Political Science at Al-Quds University, Dr. Ayman El-Raqib, and welcome to Qnews, Dr. Ayman. And
afternoon,
and
ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for being with us. And let me just start off by asking you, what are, do you think, the potential implications of Israel's ground operation in the Palestinian side of Rafah for the broader Gaza conflict and the possibility of a permanent ceasefire?
Clearly, from the maps announced by the occupation, it tends into the occupations of a great vast majority of territories and the announcement of the leaders by dominating 25% of Gaza territories. According to the map, talking about the settlement started by Philadelphia corridor till Khan Yunis, based on the maps, that's an extended area. Mostly half of these borders we're talking about Rafah cities and the coast area as a whole, around 2 kilometers into Khan Yunis. So, and as well as the resettlement in Netzarim, that is another thing, in Deir al-Balah too. And another area in the western northern of the Gaza Strip in general. So it's an area that exceeds 25% according to the map. Certainly the incursion that started around 72 hours by the arrivals of the armored battalions of 36 that started within air coverage in complete blocks. And today, according to the Israeli reports by the security, that there is no correspondence to take the or to brief us with the scenes by dominations of the Israeli occupation from Rafah till its centers. That means around half of Rafah under the control. Most dangerously, that's the stranded families due to the lack of vehicles, due to the lack of the fuels to transfer them from their area, and the dangers of the ambulance arrivals, even the medical crews and the international crews following the withdrawal of the international organizations from the work in the Gaza Strip. I do not think that would
Sir, can I sorry, can I also ask you another question? And what do you think are the legal and political implications of Israel recognizing 28 new settlements in the occupied West Bank under the international law?
Unfortunately, all the operations made by the occupations are out of the international law. Using the Hungarian weapons is in a complete violation of the Geneva Convention's Article 4. Unfortunately, the international community is crippled, along with the announcement from the state of withdrawal of the ICC to protect Netanyahu, whether he is intending that, according to the Prime Minister of Hungary, is a personal friend of Netanyahu. So we're talking on a blatant violations by the Israeli occupations along with allies against the international law. And violating also Oslo agreement between Palestine and Israel. What's happening in Gaza, along with in the West Bank, around 200 kilometers, along with the annexation of 13 settlements and the return of the relations in the north. All these settlements have been evacuated in 2005. Violates all the agreed conventions and agreements between Israel and Palestine.
Dr. Ayman, what do you think about the Israeli Defense Minister Katz announcing the expansion of the ground operations in Gaza and his intention to capture more territories and add them to what he describes as Israel's security area? Does this constitute a significant shift in the occupation's ultimate war aims?
Clearly, the announcement of the Defense Minister Katz just to prove that they can, what is the processors failed, as well as the chief of the chief of staff. So we are entering in a bit of those political maneuvers to prove what their processors failed to do by occupying Gaza or violating all the international laws. They never cared about this or the peace, as we agreed upon of demilitarization state throughout 24 hours following the Arab summit held in Beirut. Its output to demanding the Palestinian statehood on the space of 22%. All these pretext is just to eliminate the Palestinian resistance along with Hamas. And this last campaign, 302, according to the report, were filled down. Among them were children and women. So we're talking about the elimination of all the Palestinian components. And by this, they think that they achieve the victory by annexation of territories, even building settlement, proving that it's a very stupid occupation back to 30 to 40 years in the past, aggressions and hostilities, and they will have to later on throughout the sacrifices to return back. Until now, we never listened of reasonable voice talking about it as a political process. All what's happening is just more bloodshed of the Palestinian people.
Sir, what do you think the impact will be of Ben Gvir's most recent storming of the Muslim holy sites in the occupied East Jerusalem have on the already volatile and tense situation in the West Bank currently?
What has been done, for instance, after his resignation of the 19th January and meet with the sisters to storming the holy places in Al-Aqsa, that affirmed that the conflict is talking about to have the feature of religious conflict, and the Jordan and Egyptian foreign ministry condemning this act, and that this conflict is not going to be in Gaza and Al-Quds, but will be beyond that. Unfortunately, this occupation is supported by the U.S., and none of them to provide political projects just for the peaceful coexistence provided by the Arab countries, and the occupation is going to be turned into a conflict of religious interest, and their officials are talking by the U.S. to support the occupation as he is a Zionist, is back to cementing the religious conflict. But it is clearly that they are insist to do so. And these motivations by Ben Gvir and the more than 60 Zionist organizations working within the occupation state, doing all these hostilities against the Palestinian people and its holy places.
Thank you very much, sir. And from Ramallah, that was the Professor of Physical Science at Al-Quds University, Dr. Ayman Al-Raqab. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. The Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich has announced that Israel has officially recognized 28 new settlements in the occupied West Bank under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government. During a tour with the Defense Minister Katz, Smotrich boasted record demolitions of Palestinian structures, calling for broader strategic measures. Katz reaffirmed Israel's commitment to settler security, vowing to counter Palestinian construction, which he described as a strategic threat to settlements. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates has strongly condemned the incursion by the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz and far-right Finance Minister Smotrich into the occupied Palestinian territories. The ministry denounced their colonial and racist remarks, which aimed to undermine Palestinian institutions as part of Israel's ongoing war on Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. It warned that such actions embolden settler violence, entrench apartheid, and defy international law. And according to a UN report, the Israeli evacuation orders have covered vast areas in northern and southern Gaza. The report confirmed that around 140,000 people have fled since the resumption of the conflict, with tens of thousands escaping last week. UNICEF noted that many Gaza residents are forced to ignore evacuation orders due to the hardships of the relocation. The Palestinian Health Ministry stated that since March 18th, more than 1,040 Palestinians have been killed and more than 2,500 injured. And for further analysis, we are joined today from Ramallah by the writer and researcher Ahmed Zakarna. Welcome, sir, to Q News. And let me first of all start by asking you what you think are the legal and geopolitical implications of Israel's formal recognition of 20 settlements in the occupied West Bank under international law.
Good evening to you and your dear viewers. It's violating the international law upon the international community and system. But unfortunately, the White House and the American Congress acknowledged these West Bank territories under the title of Yehuda and Samira. So Israel is supported and practically by the U.S. as the world police and the new settler that is dealing in a bid of the only and sole leader imposing tariffs against the EU to whatever they like, impose upon countries in the Middle East like the EC, and therefore is breaking all the perceptions of the international laws stipulated in the 242 and 338 UN resolutions. Stated that the West Bank are occupied lands in 1967, and the ICC resolution in 2004 stipulated that the buffer water is an apartheid wall, including the West Bank is the Palestinian occupied territories, meaning that Israel is continuing to violate the international law. It's a project in the West Bank and its plans published by Smotrich 7-8 years ago, what is called the theory of the decisive rule and the full domination of the West Bank, at least the areas of C and B.
Mr. Zakarna, how do you think might this latest move by the Israeli government affect the viability of a future Palestinian state and the two-state solution framework, do you think?
Unfortunately, we cannot talk about the Palestinian state today. The Israeli plans pushes the West Strip in the front, but the main goal is the cleansing and to deal the geographical in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip in particular, because the new thing for the Israeli plan that the displacement door and portal in the West Bank can contain the displacement in the Gaza Strip. So the position of the Gaza geography, and they are pushing forward to push the people in the western Palestinian Rafah along with the Egyptian borders, and to try to dominate and control all the operations of the vital assistance. And this is among the bids that featured by the Trump's taking into the office of the U.S. administration. So all the matters are in the hands of Netanyahu by changing the Minister of Defense and the Chief of Staff, as well as the controlling the deep in the state and the elimination of the Chief of Shabak, along with the judiciary officials. That would help Israel to move forward of the grand plan with the Clinton, that even if it came under the title of the voluntary displacement by Trump, which is not the case, because the citizen is forced to die due to the hunger or thirst. So it is not voluntary, but it is forced, and genocide war participated by the United States according to the international law.
Let me ask you, sir, what impact do the statements, do you think, from the Israeli ministers like Smotrich and Katz have on the ground in terms of settler violence and tensions with Palestinian communities?
If the talk around the West Bank, it is just a pretext or flimsy pretext provided by the Minister of the Israeli extremist, as this was published, as I said before, 8 years ago. So the coalition of the government is based on the annexation and of the lands and more settlements in the West Bank, and on the attempt of dominate in the areas of 60% of the occupied territories in 1967, and to attempt to pressure the Palestinians to be positioned in areas that are represented or just for 10 to 12% of the West Bank. So he treated two matters as Yehuda and Samira, which is the West Bank being controlled and dominated as a whole, and to increase the settlement and to create, or rather to transfer the settlement to big cities, such as 4 settlements in the West Bank. And in the other front, would treat the demographic cause of the Palestinian people and residents that were even in the number throughout the historical occupied Palestine in 1948, along with the Jewish people in the occupied territories. So the main demographic cause. So they pressuring to a bit of displacement at least half of the Gazans, and in a bid to create an expelled environment through moving the residents in a geographic area that cannot bear such a number of people. That means more than 3.5 Palestinian people, at least, according to the statistics. So they're trying to create and expel an environment later on, and they announced this by chasing all the dual nationals. Even the Israeli state, 70% of them are dual nationals.
And from Ramallah, that was the writer and researcher Ahmed Zakarna. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. And that brings us to the end of our special coverage on Gaza and the West Bank. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG. to stay informed. And thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.